Welcome to another episode of Steven's Study here with the host, Steven Prijon Garner. And you all know the drill. Before we get started, make sure you like and subscribe. And without further ado, let's dive into the film. All right, so what we're going to be looking at first here is the action that leads to the plot of this film session, which is Oso Ighodaro and his baseline cuts. And it's the why and the how in which it comes about that really sets the table for it to be so efficient and so effective so often. So what we're going to be seeing is something that's not new in terms of Suns fans that have been watching the team for quite some time. They get into their traditional elbow action. So we see what they're going to be having here is multiple guards involved at the elbows and just basically screening for each other to set the table for the action to come. So in traditional senses, this would usually be horns. Shout out to Espo who's been asking for this. It would be usually the center for the Suns and then one of their elite level guards that's receiving the screen from the center to then flow out into multiple types of actions and scenarios. Here, we're going to be seeing is Grayson Allen receiving the screen from Devin Booker, and then we'll pause it and talk about it after that. So we get the screen for Grayson Allen from Devin Booker. And now, as we get into looking at the Suns and something we talked about in one of their recent film sessions, the respacing elements within their spacing template. Notice here on this side of the court that there's no one available for help. Royce O'Neal is stashed way into the deep corner. His man is right next to him in that same area. And then as we look at force our attention over here, the opposing center, Goga Bitadze, is right here. And the plot of the film session, Oso Ighodaro, is waiting to see what he decides to do in reaction to what happens here up top on the ball. And it's important to know what's happening up top on the ball because Goga Bitadze, who's the low man right here like we spoke to, is anticipating some type of action where one of these two players here is going to be getting downhill and he's going to be forced to stop it by putting the fire out at the rim. And promptly with that, and in tandem with it is going to be a rotation from who's guarding Tyus Jones here to try to sink down and take away any type of cut that might take place, but also be responsible for the first pass that might go out from whatever happens in the paint here out to one of these two players that's here on the second side. So as we see all of that kind of develop and let it all play out, we'll see what happens from there. So you talk about the flat angle screen from Devin Booker. That gives Grayson Allen neutrality in terms of which direction he wants to go. And because Kentavious Caldwell-Pope right here is playing to Booker's right side, that gives Grayson Allen a runway to go to his right side, the opposite direction of where Devin Booker is facing. And because there's no help over here, that's automatically engaging the opposing center, the low man, Goga Bitadze. And as soon as he commits to the drive from Grayson Allen, you see the cut promptly from Oso Ighodaro. That sets up shot for the alley-oop, the baseline cut, and he's able to put that home. And as we bring it back a little bit more just to pay attention to some of the subtle nuances within it, because of which the timing in which his cut takes place, this defender right here has no chance to get into that same lane that he just cut to kind of trail the person that's guarding him. And because it's all happening so quick and the Suns respacing and how high up the floor Tyus Jones initially is, as you see when Oso commits to the cut, Tyus Jones is high enough up the floor to where his man is kind of in no man's land and he just can't be right. If he commits too early, Tyus Jones, who's knocked down a handful of threes in this stretch of games, is wide open. And if he's late, you get the alley-oop. We see the ladder here. Grayson makes a great pass to Oso, and Oso finishes the oop. All right, same play, same spacing template, same context. We see the Suns going with their smalls and elbow action. So again, in this example that we're going to be looking at, it's going to again be both Grayson Allen and Devin Booker kind of playing ring around the rosy a little bit in between the elbows. And then as we let the play develop from there, we're going to see what comes up. So a little ring around the rosy. Ultimately, it's going to be Grayson Allen that's coming out to get the ball again out of elbow. And then we see them respace. And I want to revert our attention to the second side before we get started on things. So as you watch Monte Morris after he passes it to Grayson Allen, watch the communication between Monte Morris and Oso Ighodaro in the bottom left corner. And you can see Monte is pointing at Oso, telling him that they're loading up to try to take away the roll. And he wants Oso to set a flare screen for him or an exit screen, just to kind of play the 2-on-1 scenario that's coming on right here. So you see them getting to the spacing template on this side of the court. You see, like we talked about before on the last rep, you got Monte Morris over here with Oso Ighodaro. Space to this side of the floor, and then this side of the floor, that wing is completely clear, giving them space to play with over there. And then Devin Booker's man is playing him to the right side of his body where he's setting the screen for Grayson Allen, and that's giving Grayson Allen all types of runway to get to this area of the floor and ultimately engage the low man, who is going to be this player right here in this scenario. So as we take that back and we kind of revert back to what's going on the court, you'll see as Grayson comes off of the screen, he engages the person that's guarding Oso, who's anticipating some type of downhill action from on the ball. And because of the timing of Oso's cut again, even with Monte wanting him to set that pin-in screen for him, it just doesn't matter because of the lack of size from the help defense that's around the basket right now. Because Oso is bigger, he has a higher verticality in terms of his leap. That's giving them all type of runway in terms of vertical spacing to play above whatever type of help-to-helper action might be coming from the defense on the backside. Advantage Suns in this scenario, Oso's able to get yet another lob because of the timing of his cut out of the spacing and respacing from the Suns. And then this was probably the best rep in this scenario because it saw the Suns get into counters and the pace at which everything took place. So you see the elbow action between Grayson Allen and Devin Booker. This time Devin Booker receiving the screen from Grayson Allen versus setting that screen for him. And he rejects that screen. You see where action took place on the first two reps that we talked about. This one's going to be a whole lot more snug to the sideline, to the outer third of the floor. And that's because they're trying to load up to take away that action from Devin Booker. So instead of going through the elbow, he just kind of flares it just to get the catch and keep their pace. And from there, you can kind of see the same elements kind of playing out here. So you see Grayson Allen kind of floating in to set the screen, and Devin Booker, because of the lack of coverage connectivity from the Golden State Warriors, you're gonna see him just kind of create an easy driving lane for himself. But we want to pay attention to this part right here in particular. So on the ball, they're trying to ice Devin Booker, keep him to the outer third of the floor and not allow for him to get to the middle. So that's what the coverage is on ball. But the person here that's guarding Grayson Allen is not in a connected manner defending the way that they need to for this coverage to be effective. This defender should be off of Grayson Allen in this area, kind of trying to pin Devin Booker to this outer third area of the floor and away from obviously the paint, but also the middle third of the floor, even to go this direction. They're trying to get the ball out of his hands and force somebody else to make a play. Because the coverage here is not sharp and it's not on schedule with the person on ball, that concedes an easy driving lane for Devin Booker, and we're going to see him just float right to space. And then from that point, you're going to see Oso time up that baseline cut again. And then the last thing on this rep that we want to talk about that's a little unique from the last couple of reps is notice where, in relation to Oso Ighodaro, we talked about the helper scenario that the Suns are compromising with this baseline cut from Oso. Notice where Monte Morris is at this moment in relation to the last two reps. We saw them in kind of corner field spacing where both Oso and the person next to him are below this break here, where the arc on the three-point line turns into a corner. That's important to note because we're talking about help the helper. This is the low man right here. The person that's supposed to help the helper in this scenario is right here. But because Monte is so far away in relation, this is the beauty of spacing, because it compromises any type of scenarios where you have to force another defender to commit to the ball, and it creates all types of chaos for the defense to try to figure out and problem solve on the fly. And because of this template of spacing and the way that the Suns get into it, and obviously the coverage laps on ball, all the defensive dominoes fall in favor of the Suns, and Devin Booker is able to hit Oso Ighodaro on this alley-oop. And now we talked about the first three scenarios where the elbow action from the Suns, using their guards in the elbow action versus having a guard and a big. Now we're going to talk about a couple of scenarios that are not necessarily the same in terms of how they come about happening, but they still generate the same scenario. So both of these reps take place against the Minnesota Timberwolves. And what we're going to be looking at is Oso Ighodaro again spaced strategically in the corner. And we're going to be watching on the ball right now. We got Tyus Jones. And then we're going to see here at the top side of the screen, it's going to be quick action for the Phoenix Suns. So it's going to be Mason Plumlee setting a wide pin early in the shot clock for Devin Booker. Defender on Devin Booker is in lock and trail. He's just locking into his backside and trying to trail him over this screen. And watch the way action unfolds as they get into this screen off ball for Devin Booker. So you get the pass, you got the lock and trail, and because of the trailing element of Devin Booker's primary matchup being on his backside now, that's engaging Rudy Gobert. And because this action is taking place in an emptied corner, there's no semblance of help that can come past Rudy Gobert on the strong side. That's going to then force from the weak side, as we see, and we get back to why Oso Ighodaro is spaced where he is, that's going to force the low man in this scenario to commit early because he sees that it's an organic 2 versus 1 between Devin Booker and Mason Plumlee, with Devin Booker as a moving target, getting it downhill with the dynamic touch and floating into space going up against Rudy Gobert. And that brings the attention back to Julius Randle. Keep your eye on Julius Randle as he tries to step over to aid the advantage that's been created in 2 versus 1, and how promptly Oso Ighodaro's cut here from the corner is to compromise it. And this is something that the Suns can literally get into whenever he's spaced around, because teams are going to consistently just kind of forget about him and play off of him because they know he's not a shooting threat. The best way to make yourself an advantage when you're not known for your shooting, either be a great cutter or a great screener to create 2 versus 1 scenarios, which if Oso decided to, he could in this scenario as well. As we watch here, we talk about Julius Randle stepping in early as the low man. Oso can make this cut, which he does, and obviously that's great for the offense. But also what he can do is go over here and set this screen for Grayson Allen. Grayson Allen can then flare to this corner. And because Julius Randle's committed to the ball, this is the 2 versus 1 between these two players as well. Just talking about different scenarios that they can flip, which Oso has done past just the baseline cuts, which are obviously the premise of our film session today. Nonetheless, he gets into the baseline cut. You see what comes of that. And he's able to get up a nice dunk. And then his last rep, the Suns get into the exact same action, but they're going to kind of get a different scenario that comes from it. So we see the quick action, the wide action here for Devin Booker. This time Anthony Edwards is guarding him, still lock and trail coverage on him. Anthony Edwards does a great job navigating that screen to the extent that where they're not comfortable passing this to Devin Booker. Also want to credit the pressure applied on the ball on Tyus Jones. So how the Suns get into some of their pressure counters and keep their pace within the actions that they're trying to get into. Quick pitch to Devin Booker is touch action where he just simply touches it so that Tyus Jones can reset and he can start to kind of get downhill. And then we're going to ultimately see him get into an angle empty side pick and roll. So the angle screen is the screen being set here from Mason Plumlee. But notice the relation of Mason Plumlee, where usually a screen where his back is going to be facing the middle of the court, his back is facing the outer third of the court. That's what makes this called an angle screen. And because of the angle nature of the screen, he's going towards the sideline. There's not going to be much of any help coming over there in that scenario. So watch the low man again where Oso Ighodaro is spaced with Josh Okogie at the bottom right corner of the screen. He has to step over to commit to the roller because they put 2 to the ball to keep Tyus Jones from turning the corner. Another timely baseline cut from Oso Ighodaro compromises the helper scenario on the backside. Advantage Phoenix Suns.